we are not a prohibited foreign entity. We are a U.S.-based, veteran-founded company.
I've got to run my data through a Chinese server. Couldn't they hack in and take over control of my power system?
We have military-grade encryption, so both the hardware and the firmware is controlled. We have U.S.-based support 7 days a week, and generally we can resolve most issues right while the installer is on site first time.
What are some of the things that Sol-Ark is doing as far as, after install support? All right, welcome back to the Solar Surge podcast. Now, if you're new to the Solar Surge podcast, on this program, we meet with the top CEOs and the top business leaders in the solar and energy storage space. Now, this afternoon, I'm here at Sol-Ark headquarters in Allen, Texas. I'm joined by John Martinson. He's the Chief Operating Officer here at Sol-Ark, and we're going to be talking about, John, all that you've been doing to keep Sol-Ark competitive in this new environment, and of course, your outlook as we look beyond 2026. So it's great to see you.
Sure.
Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Hey, Joe, great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we're finally here. It's 2026. We knew last year that there were major changes that are going to be coming to the solar industry, particularly to the residential side of the solar industry, whether it's a new tariff environment, changes in the tax credit, or in the case of the individual, the loss of the individual tax credit, more restrictions on so-called foreign entities of concern and like where this solar equipment's coming from. So, tell us, what have you been doing here at Sol-Ark? How have you reconfigured your business to remain competitive and grow in this new policy environment?
Yeah, it's certainly been interesting over the last 13, 14 months or so. First with the tariffs and having to manage through the tariff environment that you mentioned. But then I think the most disruptive change that we saw really came through the One Big Beautiful Bill Act and the expansion of foreign entities of concern, what that means, what that definition is, and really the efforts by the government to ensure that our energy infrastructure is much more secure going forward. So we certainly embrace and endorse all of those intents. And as we're going through this transition, there's a lot of confusion, some ambiguity, some lack of clarity. And I think as we're all trying to navigate that, we're helping each other along in that process. Specific actions that we've taken as well, really as we take a look at our supply chain and the focus on the foreign entities of concern. I think it's important to first note that we are not a prohibited foreign entity. We are a U.S.-based, veteran-founded company. We continue to actively manage our supply chain and minimize the exposure that we have to FEOC content, and continue to reinforce that throughout the manufacturing work that we do here on site. We've continued to expand that. All of our inverters are produced here in Allen, Texas. And the firmware that we develop is designed here. We have a team of over 70 engineers that are based here in Allen as well. So I think continuing to drive more of that U.S. basis for all of the aspects of our product, both firmware and hardware, I think has really been one of the key points for us.
Great. Well, I'm going to have more questions on that here in a little bit.
Sure.
But I guess for those that may not be as familiar with a lot of this terminology, what is a foreign entity of concern, and why is that an important piece of the equation now, talking about how solar systems are financed in 2026?
Sure. So foreign entities of concern are primarily 4 countries: Iran, North Korea, Russia, and China, which is most pertinent when we talk about the solar industry and how much product does come from China. In addition to those 4 countries, there are a number of companies themselves that are actually labeled and identified, and those are mostly Chinese-based companies, some that are involved in production of solar cells, battery cells, and so forth. When we talk about foreign entity of concern, not only is it those specific entities, then you heard me reference that we are not a prohibited foreign entity, so we're not a PFE. Prohibited foreign entity would be anyone who is any company that is under the influence or control or jurisdiction of those FEOCs, foreign entities of concern. And then not only directly, but now you also have something that would be considered a foreign influence entity. So if you are relying on technology, licensing arrangements, things to that effect, that would still tie too much control or influence over your company, your products, and so forth into one of those 4 countries or those other companies that are so enumerated.
Got it. Got it. Well, in all my years in solar, I don't think I've ever seen an Iranian inverter or a North Korean inverter. But of course, as you know, right, a lot of the equipment that we see in the solar industry that we're using on a day-to-day basis, a lot of this equipment is manufactured, or at least had been manufactured in China. So what does it look like for a company like Sol-Ark? What does it look like to become compliant, if you weren't previously, but to become compliant with these FEOC and prohibited foreign entity regulations?
So I think if we take a step back, even from the original IRA, there was already enough incentive to bring more of the manufacturing base domestically, bring it into the U.S. So both for manufacturers and then for the purchasers of our product. And then that just got further accelerated, not only moving things to the U.S., but then in addition, if you don't move fully to the U.S., and there are practical matters and cost matters and so forth that get involved there, at least moving those things into countries that are considered to be more safe and getting outside of China. So a lot of the work over the last few years since I've been with the organization has been both ramping up our internal manufacturing capability, but also realigning our supply chain to de-emphasize any of the direct supply that we get from China, but then even secondary and tertiary suppliers, and continuing to drive less and less content that may originate in China.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, it seems like Washington now has taken, or kind of adopted this concept that, renewable energy is part of America's critical energy infrastructure. And so we ought to be able to produce that, whatever renewable energy capacity we need with American-made or American-friendly suppliers. So I think I understand that. And that actually leads me to my next question, because, a question that I often get, or feedback that I hear all the time from viewers and listeners is, well, why would I buy this inverter when I've got to run my data through a Chinese server? Couldn't they hack in and take over control of my power system or shut down my power system? I mean, how would you answer that?
Yeah, well, I think it's extremely important. It's a great point that people make. Our founders have been very focused on security from the time we started the organization. So we've been around since 2013. We have our roots in the off-grid market. And really throughout that time, we've had a very strong emphasis on safety, security, reliability, understanding how important it is for people to have control over their own power, their own means for production of that energy. So as far as control and data goes, we also take that very seriously. And I think one of the most current demonstrations of that commitment is we have a new 4G dongle that's going to be introduced mid-year. Not only does it have the firmware that we have developed here and keep that very closely controlled, we have military-grade encryption, so both the hardware and the firmware is controlled. Any of the information from our customers is all housed on US-based AWS servers and managed by our team and under strict controls as far as both privacy and security goes. So security is critical, privacy is just as critical for our customer base.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I know, part of the whole off-grid mindset, right, is this idea of, wanting to be self-sufficient and, not relying on third parties, or certainly not relying on international third parties, to maintain, and operate your power equipment. Now, the environment has been very tough for solar installers, particularly residential solar installers, over the past couple of years. I mean, I could go all the way back to the loss of one-for-one net metering in California, but of course, most recently, the loss of the 30% individual tax credit, beginning at January of this year, so certainly, created some headwinds for residential solar installers. So, I know one concern that has really been a challenge for many installers, particularly now that kind of everything's going to batteries. A lot of companies that may have started doing, grid-tied solar only with net metering, now they're pretty much forced to do solar and battery storage as well. And I know one of the things that really can hurt you as a solar installer is having to go for a third or a fourth visit to the same site to get the kinks worked out of a solar and battery system, especially if the home is wired for whole house backup. So from a quality perspective, what are some of the things that Sol-Ark has seen in terms of how your equipment is performing in the real world now that more and more solar homeowners are doing solar with battery storage attached?
Sure. No, great, great. I think as we benchmark ourselves against competitors in the industry, we believe we have a very low return rate. We're in low single digits in terms of returns. And when I consider returns, it's not just product that has to be sent back to us, but even when we consider field serviceability. So there are a number of service items that can be performed actually out in the field. So it's only one trip for an installer to the site to be able to perform that. Also, the support that we provide, we have US-based support 7 days a week. We have over 50 support technicians, and generally we can resolve most issues right while the installer is on site first time. We have a very high first call resolution rate. We're over 80% first call resolution for calls that do come in. But then if units do need to get sent back and sent into service, if we're here on the mainland of the US, great, they come right here to Allen, Texas. But we have set up authorized service centers in Puerto Rico. We're ramping one up right now in Mexico, just about ready to launch one in Hawaii. Canada is going to be our next step, and then we may expand further into other parts of the US as well, just to make sure we have that very quick turnaround time in those rare instances when a unit does actually have to get pulled off the wall and sent back for service.
Great, great. Yeah, because I know so much of the conversation is about how great the features of the product are and all of that. But I think from a solar installer's perspective, somebody that used to operate a solar installation business, it really is a partnership between the installer and the manufacturer and the manufacturer support team. Because as you know, most of these solar systems are not being done as a one-off project. Most of these solar systems are considered to be a 20 to 30 year asset. So it's not only getting the system installed, but now it's keeping that system healthy over the entire 20 or 30 year life of the system. So what are some of the things that Sol-Ark is doing as far as after install support, to make sure that the installer not only gets the system online, but is able to keep that system healthy, without it costing the installer an unreasonable amount of money over the long term?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you emphasizing the installers. I mean, we think the installers are absolutely critical in helping to enable our vision of easily accessible, affordable, reliable, innovative energy storage solutions. We do a lot to work with our installers. We have Sol-Ark University, as an example, is set up with both real-time as well as on-demand training classes. A number of those classes are eligible for NABCEP continuing education credits. We have an installer program we call the Installer Core. And as installers become more and more experienced with our product, perform more and more installations, they advance through different levels within that program and get additional benefits, more direct tie to more advanced service. People who are very familiar with our product generally don't need level 1 service. They can solve those problems on their own. So they can get a direct line to our level 2 service technicians, as an example. Other benefits, it is painful anytime someone has to do a truck roll. Certainly painful if they're having to send product back and forth and having to do multiple trips. So we have additional benefits in there that help offset some of their costs, as well as, again, they move through different levels within our certified installer program. We incorporate a lot of the feedback from the installers as well. So for example, our 18K product that just launched last fall, we incorporated a lot of the feedback we received on the 15K product. So 15K product is a great product, generally very good feedback, but there's always opportunities for improvement, some things that we can do a bit better. We listened to our installers, we incorporated a number of those changes, make it easier to install, change where the cutouts are, the size of the cutouts, things to that effect. It may seem very simple, but it certainly saves time, makes things easier for the installer on that end. We've just released quick start guides, so to help with that whole initial installation and commissioning process as well. And we've actually had a significant reduction in those initial calls that come in when installers on site and just, hey, how do I set things up? How do I get my initial settings so that things operate properly? And that only helps us on our side, but certainly helps the installers by not having to make those calls and create the additional delays in the setup process.
Sure, sure. Now you mentioned the Sol-Ark 18K hybrid inverter, which I believe as of this recording is the most powerful residential hybrid inverter. And one of the things that is advantageous about this model, sort of that 48 volt modular battery inverter model is that you basically you're paying for the inverter once, as long as that inverter has enough power capacity for your solar and to power the loads in your home, then you can add on battery storage at a much smaller incremental cost per kilowatt hour. Using a battery which could be a third-party battery, like Renan Power, they do a 48-volt battery here that I believe is also going to be assembled here in the Dallas area.
Yes.
And but if you're looking at just incremental cost per kilowatt hour, it's a lot less than some of these all-in-one, more proprietary systems. So for solar installers that are out there that are considering, hey, all right, I know I have to be installing battery storage, I have to offer it. There's all these dozens of different battery options available. What would you tell those installers as far as advantages of partnering with Sol-Ark versus some of the other alternatives that are on the market?
Yeah, I think one of the advantages, and it's really been a philosophy from the start for us, is we say that we're battery agnostic. And we have a lot of partners. We want to ensure that products work properly the first time. So we do go through the process of qualifying and certifying different battery partners. But it's designed so that it can work with any battery as long as the battery meets certain standard specifications. I think by having that versatility, competition's a great thing. There are a number of different batteries that are on the market. And allowing that room for additional expansion as you go down the road, battery prices will continue to decrease as time goes on. We've seen them come down quite a bit over the years in the past. That's going to continue for us in the future. So having additional options where people are able to select the best battery, what fits their need, what fits their budget, what fits their power requirements at any point in time. And I think that kind of versatility is really one of the advantages that you do get with Sol-Ark.
Great. Well, as we now are fully through the first quarter of 2026, and it sounds like you have absorbed and been able to adapt to the new policy environment. What's your outlook as you look at the solar industry going forward beyond 2026?
Yeah, it's certainly been a tumultuous year for a number of things that we've already touched on. As we look later this year, I think the things that are starting to change is there's more understanding and recognition how to manage, how to navigate around the new requirements that came in. The tariffs, I think, have largely stabilized. What's going on with understanding of the FEOC requirements and the guidance that has come out has helped to clarify a number of the key points there. So as we see that start to stabilize, we're also seeing a bit more of a push in the demand. So with the onshoring of more manufacturing in the U.S., not just in this industry, but in industries overall, the extra demand on the grid. There's more EVs. We have the data centers that are continuing to come online. And one of the quickest and most effective ways to bring more energy into the grid is through distributed means. So distributed solar, distributed batteries is certainly going to continue to have more and more prominence. And I think as we get through this initial challenging period of uncertainty, and we start to come out, we're actually going to see some pretty significant strength in the industry as a whole, particularly going into late Q2, early Q3, and then as we close the year.
Great. Well, we're certainly going to do our best to keep up with what you all are doing and be able to share with the audience everything that you all are doing and what's going on with the industry as a whole. Definitely been a lot of shakeup in the last couple of years, guys. Those of you who've been watching for a while know that. But the industry also has proven to be very resilient. And I would agree with you that as there's more and more demand, whether it's AI, electric vehicles, you name it, as more and more energy is needed, this is still one of the most cost-effective ways,
absolutely,
to do it. So,
great.
Well, John, thank you for spending some time.
Joe, thank you very much.
Talk with us. Again, folks, this is John Martinson. He's the Chief Operating Officer here at Sol-Ark. And again, guys, that's why we do these interviews. We know that not all of you are going to have an opportunity to go out to all the conferences and trade shows or to meet with the executives at the companies that are enabling this renewable energy revolution. And so that's why we come out and try to get you the best up-to-date information. But that pretty much does it for today's episode. I thank you all for spending some more time on the Solar Surge channel. And as always, I'm Joe Ordia here, encouraging you to get prepared and be empowered. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.